The sound of helicopter rotors cuts through dusty air. Blood pools around combat boots as hands work with surgical precision. A heartbeat falters, then strengthens. Some wounds never fully heal. They just become part of who we are. In the peaceful town of Redwood Falls, battle lines have been drawn that no map shows. The war came home with the warriors in nightmares that won't fade in anger that finds no worthy target in brothers who became enemies when the fighting should have ended. They say you can't save everyone, that some souls are beyond redemption. The doctor knows this truth better than most, her fingers still remembering the feeling of her mother's blood. The soldier understands it too, his body marked with scars earned protecting others before he became what he once fought against. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about the courage to face what you've become and choose a different path when the easier road leads back to darkness. In a town where strength once meant fear, true power will be revealed in who we choose to protect. The sound of gunfire crackled in the distance. Smoke billowed across the Afghan mountains, casting shadows over the medical tent. Olivia Reeves's hands moved with surgical precision as blood pooled around her boots. The young soldier beneath her fingers was fading fast. Shrapnel had torn through his chest, missing his heart by centimeters. "Stay with me," she whispered, not looking at his face, focusing only on the wound. More explosions rocked the outpost. The tent shuddered. Dust rained from the canvas ceiling. "Doctor, we need to evacuate," someone shouted. Olivia ignored them. Her world had narrowed to this single task, the torn flesh beneath her hands. The soldier's eyes fluttered open for a moment, intense blue eyes filled with fear. "You're not dying today," she said firmly. "Not on my watch." His lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear over the chaos. The memory fractured suddenly. Olivia woke with a gasp, sheets twisted around her body soaked with sweat. Her bedroom walls came into focus. No tent, no mountains, no blood. Just the soft light of dawn filtering through curtains and the distant sound of wind chimes from the porch. 7 years had passed since Afghanistan, yet the dreams remained as vivid as yesterday. She reached for the pendant around her neck, a small silver locket containing a fragment of fabric from her mother's blouse. The blouse she'd been wearing the day of the accident, the day 12-year-old Olivia had tried and failed to save her. The floorboards creaked as she made her way down the hallway of the small wooden house. She paused outside her father's door, listening to his steady breathing before continuing to the kitchen. Coffee, always the first ritual after the nightmares. As the water boiled, Olivia gazed through the window at Redwood Falls, Oregon. From this hillside vantage, she could see the small town nestled between forest and river. Once a place of childhood comfort, now a town transformed. The Iron Serpent's motorcycles were already visible, patrolling Main Street like modern-day highwaymen. Their clubhouse, a converted warehouse at the edge of town, flew their flag, a coiled serpent ready to strike. It hadn't always been like this. The town had changed during her 7 years away. Another nightmare. Gabriel Reeves's voice came from behind her. Olivia turned to see her father navigating the kitchen with practiced ease, his custom walking stick tapping gently against the floorboards. Despite his blindness, Gabriel moved with the confidence of a man who had memorized every inch of his environment. "The same one," she answered, pouring coffee into his favorite mug and guiding his hand to it. Gabriel nodded. The explosion that had taken his sight 3 years ago had left his face scarred, but his mind remained sharp. His military bearing had never left him, even in retirement. "Some wounds heal slower than others," he said, his fingers finding the chair. Olivia watched him sit, noticing how he tilted his head to catch the morning sounds. The birds, the distant church bell, the rumble of motorcycles. "They're starting early today," Gabriel remarked. "Third day this week, they've patrolled before 9. Olivia replied, slipping into her clinic coat. The once pristine white fabric was now faded from countless washings, each attempting to remove invisible stains only she could see. Gabriel's hand found hers across the table. "Be careful out there. This isn't the town you left behind." The Redwood Falls Medical Clinic sat on the corner of Elm and Main, a modest single-story building that had served the community for generations. Dr. Eleanor Hayes had maintained it for 30 years before finally retiring and passing the torch to Olivia. Margaret, the receptionist in her 60s who had worked with Dr. Hayes for decades, looked up as Olivia entered. "2 cancellations this morning," she reported, her expression grim. "The Hendersons and Mrs. Taylor." Olivia frowned. Mrs. Taylor's insulin check. Margaret nodded. Said she wasn't feeling well, but Alice at the pharmacy told me iron serpents were parked outside her apartment building yesterday, collecting community donations. The euphemism hung bitterly in the air. That's the third diabetic patient who's missed appointments this month, Olivia said, reviewing the schedule. People are scared dear. Margaret lowered her voice, especially after what happened to Bill Connor. Bill Connor, Vietnam veteran, suffered from chronic pain. Found dead in his garage last week, self-inflicted gunshot wound. The iron serpents had been pressuring him for payments he couldn't afford on his fixed income. Has Officer Carter done anything? Olivia asked. Margaret's expression said everything. Samuel Carter was the town's aging police chief close to retirement and unwilling to confront the growing iron serpents problem. Some said he had struck a deal, looked the other way in exchange for relative peace. The morning proceeded with a steady stream of patients. Olivia treated Mrs. Peterson's arthritis, young Tommy Wilson's ear infection, and Mr. Gunderson's heart medication review. All the while she noticed how patients glanced nervously out the window whenever motorcycles passed. By noon, the waiting room had emptied early. Olivia used the unexpected free time to organize medication samples for patients who couldn't afford their prescriptions, increasingly common as the iron serpent's extortion spread. I'm heading to the lighthouse for lunch, Margaret announced, gathering her purse. Care to join me? Clara makes a pot roast on Thursdays. That would make your mother proud. The mention of her mother brought a fleeting smile to Olivia's face. I should check on Dad first. Maybe I'll bring him along. The Lighthouse Diner stood as an institution in Redwood Falls, its weathered blue exterior and vintage neon sign a constant through decades of change. Inside, vinyl booths lined the windows, and the counter stools had witnessed generations of town gossip. Clara Wilson moved between tables with practiced efficiency, coffee pot in hand. At 55, her face showed lines of both laughter and hardship. The gold wedding band on her finger gleamed in the afternoon light, a tribute to her late husband, a Vietnam veteran who had succumbed to Agent Orange complications 5 years earlier. The diner hummed with lunchtime chatter, though noticeably subdued compared to Olivia's memories. Gabriel sat across from her, his fingers exploring the edges of his plate, mapping its contents. Pot roast at 3 o'clock, green beans at 6, potatoes at 9. Olivia guided quietly. Gabriel nodded appreciation and began to eat with dignity, his movements precise despite his blindness. Clara approached with fresh coffee. Good to see you both, she said warmly. How's the clinic, Olivia? Quieter than it should be, Olivia replied. Like everything else around here. Clara sighed, glancing toward the window as the rumble of approaching motorcycles grew louder. The atmosphere in the diner shifted instantly. Conversation stopped. Silverware stilled against plates, eyes lowered to tables. 5 motorcycles pulled up outside the lighthouse. Their riders dismounted with practiced synchronicity, leather cuts emblazoned with the iron serpent's patch. A coiled serpent wrapped around a combat knife. Not again, Clara whispered, her knuckles whitening around the coffee pot. The leader entered, first his presence commanding immediate attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features, partially obscured by a close-cropped beard. A jagged scar ran from his left temple down his cheek. Jackson Viper, Blackwood. Behind him followed 4 others. Ethan Reed, his right-hand man, leaner and more watchful, 2 heavy-set enforcers, and a younger man with cold eyes and a perpetual sneer. Caleb Talon, Hayes Jackson's cousin. Afternoon, Clara. Jackson called, his voice carrying an unsettling blend of charm and menace. Smells good in here today. Clara's smile didn't reach her eyes. What can I get you boys? Just making our weekly collection? Caleb answered before Jackson could speak. Business protection fees. Clara set down her coffee pot. I paid on Monday. Rates went up, Caleb replied, sliding into the nearest booth uninvited. Town council's not keeping the streets safe, so we've had to increase our patrols. Olivia noticed Ethan's discomfort, how his eyes darted between Jackson and Caleb. Something unspoken passed between them. I can't afford more, Clara said quietly. Business is down. People aren't going out as much. That sounds like a personal problem, Caleb laughed. Gabriel's walking stick tapped against the floor as he straightened in his seat. The lady said she's already paid. The diner fell completely silent. Olivia tensed, watching Jackson turn toward their table. His eyes narrowed as he took in Gabriel's scarred face, the milky blindness of his eyes, the military straight posture, despite his disability. Don't recall asking for your opinion, old man, Caleb said, starting to rise. Jackson held up a hand, stopping him. You served, he stated, studying Gabriel. Marine Corps, 26 years, Gabriel replied evenly. And you? A flash of something, respect perhaps, crossed Jackson's face. Army, Special Forces, Submarine. Then you should know better than this, Gabriel said, his blind eyes somehow finding Jackson with unerring accuracy. This isn't what we fought for, Caleb snorted derisively. Times change, Gramps. World doesn't give a damn about your service. We came back to nothing, so we built something ourselves. You built nothing, Gabriel replied, his voice carrying the unmistakable tone of command. You're just taking from those who did. The tension in the diner crackled like static electricity. Customers shifted nervously. Clara stood frozen behind the counter. Jackson moved closer to their table, his focus now on Olivia. You should teach your father to be more careful about who he challenges. Olivia met his gaze steadily. My father doesn't need lessons in courage. He earned his in combat. And you think we didn't? Jackson leaned down, palms flat on their table. That's when Olivia saw it. The slight tremor in his left hand. The barely perceptible flinch when a dish clattered in the kitchen. The hyper-vigilance as he positioned himself with his back to the wall. Classic PTSD symptoms. She'd seen them hundreds of times. I think you came back from war carrying more than you could handle alone, she said quietly, for his ears only. We all did. Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. Surprise, perhaps recognition. It vanished quickly behind practiced hardness. You don't know anything about me, he growled. I know what unprocessed trauma looks like, Olivia replied calmly. I know what it's like to lose sleep because the memories won't fade. Caleb stepped forward, impatient. We're not here for therapy, Jackson. Let's collect and go. Clara approached reluctantly, opening her register. Gabriel's walking stick struck the floor with a sharp crack. You don't have to pay them, Clara, he said firmly. Jackson straightened, his expression darkening. I respect your service, old man, but don't push it. This is Iron Serpent's territory now. Territory, Gabriel scoffed. You sound like you're still in Kandahar. The word hit Jackson like a physical blow. His posture stiffened. What did you say? He asked, voice dangerously quiet. My father was an intelligence officer before he lost his sight, Olivia interjected. He recognizes military bearing even when it's misused. Caleb moved toward Gabriel, but Jackson held him back, studying Olivia more carefully now. And you? What's your connection to this? Navy, Medical Corps, 7 years. She held his gaze. 3 tours in Afghanistan. A ripple of uncertainty passed through the Iron Serpents. Even Caleb hesitated. Jackson's eyes narrowed. Doctor, combat surgeon. Olivia's hand unconsciously touched the pendant at her neck. I've seen what war does to people. What it continues doing long after they come home. For a moment, the hardness in Jackson's expression wavered. Then Caleb stepped between them. Enough talk. Pay up, Clara, or we start breaking things. Clara's hands trembled as she opened the register. Olivia stood slowly, positioning herself between her father and the Iron Serpents. This isn't going to end how you think, she said. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Is that right? You planning to fight us, Doc? No. Olivia reached for her phone. But I think it's time you remembered who you used to be before you became this. She dialed a number, her eyes never leaving Jackson's. This is a waste of time, Caleb growled, grabbing a salt shaker and hurling it against the wall. The crash made several patrons gasp. Olivia spoke clearly into the phone. Sunrise Protocol. Yes, Lighthouse Diner. Redwood Falls. She paused. Kandahar situation. Jackson frowned, recognition flickering across his features. Who the hell are you calling? Caleb demanded. Friends, Olivia replied, slipping the phone back into her pocket. You have about 15 minutes to reconsider your approach here. Jackson studied her suspicion and curiosity battling in his expression. You're bluffing. Town cops are useless and county sheriff is half an hour away. I'm not calling the police, Olivia said. I'm calling in a debt. Gabriel smiled slightly, his blind eyes somehow finding Jackson. Son, I can't see your face, but I can smell your fear. The words struck like a physical blow. Jackson's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Caleb knocked over a nearby table. We're not waiting around for her bluff, he snarled. Pay up now, Clara. Clara looked from the iron serpents to Olivia, uncertainty plain on her face. It's your choice, Olivia told her. But either way, things changed today. The minutes ticked by in tense silence. Jackson remained unnaturally still, watching Olivia with growing uncertainty. Ethan shifted uncomfortably by the door, his eyes constantly checking the street outside. 13 minutes after Olivia's call, the first vehicle appeared. A black SUV with tinted windows. Then another, and another. Motorcycles followed, not the flashy choppers of the Iron Serpents, but practical, powerful machines. They parked in a semicircle around the Iron Serpent's bikes. What the hell? Caleb moved to the window. Men and women emerged from the vehicles, diverse in age and appearance, but sharing an unmistakable bearing. Military, not in uniform, but carrying themselves with disciplined precision. A woman in her 50s approached the diner first. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her posture ramrod straight. Behind her followed at least 20 others, forming a loose perimeter around the building. Who called in the cavalry? Caleb sneered, but his voice lacked conviction. The door opened. The woman entered, surveying the scene with clinical efficiency. Her gaze found Olivia immediately. Captain Reeves, she said, her voice carrying the authority of long command. Dr. Hayes, Olivia replied, standing straighter. Thank you for coming. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, the name registered on Jackson's face with visible shock. The former head of one of the most respected combat medical units in Afghanistan, a legend among deployed forces. Hayes approached Gabriel next, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Major Reeves, it's been too long. Eleanor! Gabriel's face softened into a genuine smile. Still swooping in to save the day, I see? Jackson's eyes darted between them, realization dawning. Reeves, he murmured. From Combat Support Hospital 42. Dr. Hayes turned to him, her expression cooling. That's right, and you are. Before Jackson could answer, Ethan stepped forward. Ma'am, Sergeant Ethan Reed, formerly 50th Special Forces Group. He hesitated. We worked Kandahar Province 2014. Recognition flickered in Hayes's eyes. The ambush at Sayaban Valley. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. Your medical team extracted our wounded under heavy fire, saved 9 of our men. More veterans had entered the diner, positioning themselves strategically. Not threatening, but present. Watchful, Caleb's swagger had diminished considerably. Jackson, what the hell is this? But Jackson wasn't listening to his cousin. His focus had locked entirely on Olivia. His expression transformed by dawning recognition. You, he said, his voice barely audible. You were there, in the dust, under the helicopter. Olivia met his gaze steadily. I was there. They called you. Jackson's voice faltered. Angel Doc. Dr. Hayes finished for him. That's what the troops called her. Captain Olivia Reeves performed emergency thoracic surgery in an active landing zone that day. Saved a soldier with shrapnel wounds that should have been fatal. The diner had fallen completely silent. Clara stood with her hand over her mouth. Margaret from the clinic watched wide-eyed from a corner booth. It was you, Jackson said again. His voice changed, stripped of its hardness. He unconsciously touched his chest where beneath his shirt lay a jagged scar. You saved me. The revelation rippled through the diner. The Iron Serpents looked at their leader in confusion. The veterans watched with grim understanding. You were hit by artillery fragments, Olivia said quietly. One piece missed your heart by less than a centimeter. You said something to me just before you lost consciousness. Jackson's expression had transformed completely, the carefully constructed hardness crumbling. Don't let me die a coward, he quoted, his voice barely above a whisper. And I told you that cowards don't run into enemy fire to drag out their wounded teammates. Olivia finished. Dr. Hayes stepped forward. Captain Reeves called us because Redwood Falls has a problem. Veterans terrorizing civilians goes against everything we stood for. She looked directly at Jackson, including what you once stood for, Sergeant Blackwood. Jackson seemed unable to tear his gaze from Olivia, as though seeing a ghost. Memories visibly washed over him, reshaping his features. Gabriel's walking stick tapped against the floor as he stood. Despite his blindness, he commanded attention. Every man at this table fought for something greater than themselves, he said. Some of you seem to have forgotten that, but it's not too late to remember. Caleb recovered first, his face contorting with rage. This is bullshit. Some old war stories don't change anything. This town belongs to the Iron Serpents now. Dr. Hayes regarded him coldly. You never served, did you, son? What's that got to do with anything? Caleb snarled. Everything, one of the veterans by the door answered. It explains why you don't understand what's happening here. Jackson, Ethan said quietly, these people, they're the real deal. Jackson remained silent, his eyes still fixed on Olivia. Something profound was happening behind those eyes. A reckoning, a remembering. You have a choice to make, Sergeant Blackwood, Dr. Hayes said. Right here, right now. Olivia stepped closer to Jackson, close enough that only he could hear her next words. I didn't save your life so you could become what you fought against, she said softly. You're better than this. You were then, and you can be again. For a long moment, the diner held its breath. Then Jackson straightened, military bearing, returning to his posture almost unconsciously. We're leaving, he announced to his men. What? Caleb exploded. You're backing down because of some doctor and her geriatric friends. Jackson's hand shot out, gripping Caleb's jacket. I said we're leaving. Now. The authority in his voice brooked no argument. Even Caleb fell silent, though hatred burned in his eyes. The Iron Serpents filed out, Jackson last among them. At the door, he paused, turning back to Olivia. This isn't over, he said, but the threat had vanished from his voice. Instead, there was confusion, conflict, something almost like grief. No, Olivia agreed. It's just beginning. As the motorcycles roared to life outside, Clara approached Dr. Hayes and Olivia, her expression a mixture of awe and hope. What happens now? She asked. Dr. Hayes surveyed the diner, the frightened townspeople, the determined veterans, the damage from the confrontation. Now, she said, we bring Redwood Falls back to the people who built it. Gabriel's walking stick tapped as he joined them, his scarred face serene. And we show lost warriors how to find their way home again. Olivia touched the pendant at her neck, watching through the window as Jackson led his men away. Something had awakened in his eyes, something she'd glimpsed years ago on a blood-soaked battlefield, a shadow of the man he'd once been, the man he might become again. The week following the standoff at the lighthouse unfolded in unexpected ways. No Iron Serpents appeared to collect protection money. Shopkeepers whispered about patrols vanishing overnight. Children played in the park without nervous parents scanning for leather-clad figures. But the motorcycles hadn't left town. Instead, they gathered at the old lumber mill on the outskirts, Iron Serpents coming and going at all hours. Watching, waiting. Donner, Hayes commandeered a suite of rooms above the hardware store, establishing a makeshift headquarters. Veterans from surrounding counties arrived daily offering support. Not all stayed, but enough remained to create a visible presence throughout Redwood Falls. On Friday morning, Olivia presented her proposal to the town council, the Warriors Path program. Her voice remained steady as she outlined the vision, a rehabilitation center for veterans struggling with PTSD addiction and reintegration. A place of healing not just for former Iron Serpents, but for all warriors lost between war and peace. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging skeptical glances. Dr. Reeves, Mayor Wilson said carefully, while we appreciate your intervention at the lighthouse, this proposal seems premature. The Iron Serpents haven't disappeared, they've only retreated. And how long before they return without this program? Olivia countered. We're offering a solution, not just a temporary fix. Councilman Parker, the bank manager, cleared his throat. The funding requirements alone will be covered. Dr. Hayes interrupted from the back of the room. The Veterans Administration has expressed interest in piloting this program with additional support from private foundations. Officer Carter, seated near the door in his worn police uniform, spoke for the first time. These men have committed crimes in our town: extortion, vandalism, assault. Are we supposed to just forgive and forget? No, Gabriel answered from beside Olivia. Justice requires accountability, but it also requires mercy. Without both, we're just continuing cycles of punishment and retaliation. The debate continued for hours. Community members offered testimonials, both of Iron Serpent's intimidation and of veterans' struggles after service. Clara spoke passionately about her late husband's battles with PTSD, how the right support might have changed everything. As the sun began to set, Mayor Wilson called for a vote. The council chambers fell silent as hands raised one by one. 4 in favor, 3 against. The Warriors Path program was approved, conditionally, on probation, a beginning. Sunday evening found Olivia alone at the clinic, organizing supplies for the program's first medical assessments. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter for Redwood Falls, either of healing or deeper division. The knock at the back door came unexpectedly. Cautious, Olivia approached the memory of Iron Serpent's threat still fresh. Ethan Reed stood on the step without his leather cut, wearing a simple flannel shirt. His eyes darted nervously to the shadows. "Can I come in?" he asked quietly. "I need to talk to you. About Jackson." Olivia hesitated, then stepped aside. "Are you alone?" Ethan nodded, entering quickly. "Nobody knows I'm here. That's probably for the best right now." In the examination room, Ethan perched on the edge of a chair, hands clasped tightly between his knees. Without the gang's leather, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "Jackson isn't who you think," he began. "Or maybe he is exactly who you think I don't know anymore." Why don't you tell me who he is then?" Olivia said, leaning against the examination table. Ethan's eyes found hers. "He was the best of us in Afghanistan, our team leader, the guy who'd walk through hell to bring everyone home." "What happened?" "What always happens," Ethan sighed. "We came back to a country that didn't understand, jobs that didn't want us, families who couldn't relate. Jackson's wife left while he was deployed. His brother died from an overdose while Jackson was hunting terrorists." Olivia remained silent, letting him continue. "The nightmares were the worst," Ethan said. "Jackson would wake up screaming, back in that valley where we lost Miller and Rodriguez. Where you saved him." He swallowed hard. "The VA was overwhelmed. Appointments months apart. Different doctor every time. Medications that made him feel like a zombie. Took in the Iron Serpents. It started as a support group, believe it or not. Veterans riding together, talking each other down from the ledge. Then Donovan from 10th Mountain killed himself. After that, something broke in Jackson." Ethan's voice dropped. "He said society had abandoned us, so we'd make our own rules, our own community. And that justified terrorizing civilians?" Ethan looked down. "It twisted slowly. Protection fees became a way to support veterans who couldn't work, then a way to show strength. Then," he trailed off. "Caleb made it worse. He never served, but he worshipped Jackson, wanted to be like him. Pushed for more aggression, more territory. And Jackson allowed it." "He's lost," Ethan said simply. "Seeing you again, it cracked something open. He hasn't slept since the lighthouse. Keeps talking about the valley, about what you said to him before he passed out." Olivia touched her pendant reflexively. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because there's a war happening at the mill," Ethan replied. "Caleb wants to hit back hard, show the town the Iron Serpents can't be challenged. Jackson is—" He hesitated. "I don't know what Jackson wants anymore. But I know he's not the man who led us in Afghanistan, and he's not the man who's been leading the Iron Serpents either." "And what do you want, Ethan?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I want to sleep without seeing Miller's face. I want to feel like my service meant something. I want—" His voice cracked. "I want to remember who I was before all this." Outside darkness had fallen completely. Olivia considered the man before her. Not an enemy, but a wounded warrior. One of many. "The program starts tomorrow," she said finally. 8 a.m. at the old community center. Medical assessments first, then psychological evaluations. Dr. Hayes has brought in specialists." Ethan nodded slowly. "Caleb has people watching. Anyone who shows up will be marked as a traitor." "That's their choice to make," Olivia replied. "Just like it's yours." After Ethan left, Olivia stood at the window for a long time watching the empty street. Somewhere across town, Jackson Blackwood was waging his own private war. Between the man who'd earned a medal for valor and the man who'd extorted money from widows. Between the soldier she'd saved and the man he'd become. She touched the pendant containing her mother's fabric scrap. Some people couldn't be saved no matter how desperately you tried. Her mother had taught her that final cruel lesson on a rain-slicked highway 20 years ago. But others could find their way back from the darkest places if only someone held a light. Dawn would reveal which path Jackson and his men would choose. The old community center stood bathed in early morning light, its weather-worn facade bearing witness to decades of town gatherings. Today it would begin a new chapter as the headquarters for the Warriors Path program. Olivia arrived early, finding Dr. Hayes already organizing intake stations with military efficiency. Veterans from neighboring counties had volunteered as security positioned discreetly around the perimeter. "Think anyone will come?" Olivia asked, setting down boxes of medical supplies. Dr. Hayes didn't look up from her clipboard. "Hard to say. First steps are always the hardest, especially for warriors who've lost their way." By 8 o'clock, everything was prepared. Chairs arranged in a circle for group sessions, private rooms designated for individual counseling, medical screening stations equipped with basics. 8:15 came and went. No one arrived. Gabriel sat patiently near the entrance, his walking stick across his knees. "Give it time," he said. "Trust takes longer to build than fear." 8:30, still empty. "The iron serpents must have scared them off," one volunteer muttered. 8:45. The door opened. Ethan Reed entered alone without his leather-cut shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. His eyes darted nervously around the room. "Am I too late?" he asked quietly. "Doctor," Hayes approached him with professional calm. "You're right on time, Sergeant Reed. We'll start with a basic medical assessment." As Olivia led Ethan to the examination area, the door opened again. 2 more Iron Serpents members entered, then another. None wore their colors. All moved with the caution of men entering enemy territory. By noon, 17 former Iron Serpents had arrived for intake. Each told a similar story, of nightmares and isolation, of seeking brotherhood in the wrong places, of wanting a different path, but not knowing how to find it. Jackson wasn't among them. Neither was Caleb. As Olivia recorded a former Marine's blood pressure, Officer Carter appeared at the door, his expression troubled. "Dr. Reeves," he said, "there's a situation at the mill. Iron Serpents fighting among themselves. Shots fired." Olivia exchanged glances with Dr. Hayes. "Casualties?" "Unknown, they've barricaded the entrance. I've called for county backup, but we're coming." Dr. Hayes interrupted, already gathering emergency supplies. The drive to the lumber mill took less than 10 minutes. Police cruisers had established a perimeter, but officers remained at a distance, weapons drawn but holding position. Through the chain-link fence, figures moved between buildings. Raised voices carried across the yard, though individual words were indistinguishable. Dr. Hayes surveyed the scene with practiced calm. "Reminds me of tribal disputes in Helmand Province. Internal power struggle," Gabriel suggested from the back seat. Olivia focused on a familiar figure near the main building, Jackson. He stood facing Caleb, their postures broadcasting confrontation even from a distance. Around them, Iron Serpents had divided, some aligned with each man. "They're fracturing," Olivia observed. Officer Carter approached their vehicle. "County SWAT is 30 minutes out. No communication from inside yet." "Has anyone tried?" Olivia asked. Carter looked uncomfortable. "These aren't reasonable men, Doctor." "Let me try." The words left her mouth before she'd fully considered them. "Absolutely not," Dr. Hayes objected. "This is a volatile situation with armed combatants." Olivia's gaze remained fixed on the distant figures. Jackson saved 6 teammates before he was wounded in Afghanistan. He received the Silver Star for valor. That man is still in there somewhere. Gabriel's hand found hers from the back seat. "What are you thinking, Olivia?" "That sometimes the bravest acts happen between battles, not during them." She turned to Hayes. "If this escalates to a SWAT operation, people will die. Maybe some of the same men who showed up for help this morning." Through the fence, the confrontation intensified. Caleb shoved Jackson, sending him stumbling backward. Hands moved toward weapons. Decision made, Olivia stepped from the car. "Olivia," Dr. Hayes called after her. but she was already moving toward the fence, hands raised to show she carried no weapon. Officer Carter started to intercept her, then stopped, his expression conflicted. "Jackson Blackwood," Olivia called, her voice carrying across the yard. The confrontation inside paused. Heads turned. "Dr. Reeves," Jackson responded after a moment, his voice guarded. "This isn't a good time for a house call." "I heard there might be injuries," she replied steadily. "I'm here as a doctor, nothing more." Caleb's voice rang out next, higher and more agitated. "She's working with them, the ones who turned our brothers against us?" "Your brothers made their own choices," Olivia responded. "Just like you're making yours right now." She approached the gate slowly, aware of eyes tracking her movement from multiple positions. Jackson broke away from the confrontation, walking toward her with controlled strides. They met at the fence chain link, separating them like a physical manifestation of the divide between his past and present. "You shouldn't be here," Jackson said, his voice low. "Caleb's unstable. He's convinced half the crew that I've gone soft because I wouldn't greenlight an attack on your program." "And have you?" Olivia asked. "Gone soft?" Something flickered across Jackson's face. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. "I don't know what I am anymore." "Yes, you do," Olivia replied quietly. "You're the sergeant who ran through enemy fire to drag wounded men to safety. The leader who put his team before himself." Jackson's eyes hardened. "That man died in Kandahar." "No," Olivia challenged. "I know he didn't, because I was the one who kept his heart beating." Behind Jackson, the confrontation had resumed. Caleb's voice rose, demanding loyalty. Some iron serpents moved to his side, others remained uncertain. "Your men are fracturing," Olivia observed, "and 17 of them came to us this morning, looking for a way home." Surprise registered on Jackson's face. 17, including Ethan. "They're tired, Jackson. Tired of carrying war inside them. Tired of being feared instead of respected. And what are you offering instead? Group therapy and medication." "Purpose," Olivia said simply. "The same thing that drove you in Afghanistan. A mission worth serving." For a moment, something vulnerable showed through Jackson's carefully constructed armor. Longing, perhaps. A glimpse of the man buried beneath years of pain and bitterness. Then gunfire erupted behind him. Jackson's body reacted before his mind could process, tackling Olivia to the ground as bullets struck the fence where they'd been standing. His weight pressed her into the dirt, shielding her from the chaos erupting inside the mill yard. More shots, shouts, the sound of running feet. "Stay down," Jackson ordered, his combat instincts fully engaged. Through the gap beneath the fence, Olivia could see boots running, motorcycles starting. The gate crashed open as iron serpents fled in multiple directions. Jackson rolled off her, scanning for threats with practiced efficiency. The yard had mostly emptied, save for a few figures taking cover behind structures. "Caleb?" Olivia asked, brushing dirt from her clothes. "Gone," Jackson replied grimly, "with about half the crew." He helped her to her feet, his expression tight with controlled anger. "He aimed at you deliberately." Police cruisers activated sirens, pursuing fleeing motorcycles. Officer Carter approached cautiously, weapon drawn but pointed downward. "What happened in there?" he demanded. Jackson's jaw worked as he formulated his response. "Civil war. Caleb wanted to hit your program, make an example. I said no." His eyes found Olivia's. "He didn't take it well." More officers surrounded them, some training weapons on Jackson, others securing the perimeter. Dr. Hayes and Gabriel approached from the vehicle, Hayes scanning Olivia for injuries, while Gabriel's walking stick tapped an anxious rhythm. "Olivia!" Gabriel called, his blind eyes searching. "I'm fine, Dad," she assured him. Officer Carter holstered his weapon reluctantly. "We need statements from everyone. And there's the matter of outstanding warrants." "That can wait," Dr. Hayes interrupted. "Right now we have injured men to attend to, unless I miss my guess." Jackson nodded fractionally. "2, nothing immediately life-threatening." Hayes turned to Carter. "Officer, I suggest we treat the wounded first, sort out legal matters after. Unless you'd prefer to explain to the VA why you interfered with medical treatment of veterans." Carter's mustache twitched with irritation, but he stepped aside. As medical teams entered the mill yard, Olivia found herself walking beside Jackson. The doctor and the patient reunited under circumstances neither could have imagined. 17, you said? Jackson asked quietly. Yes, all looking for something the Iron Serpents couldn't give them. Jackson surveyed the mill yard, the place that had been his kingdom, now a battleground between warring factions of his own creation. And what about me? He asked, his voice barely audible. Is there a path back from this? Olivia thought of her mother, of battlefield triage, of the impossible choices that separated those who could be saved from those beyond help. That depends, she said finally, on whether you're ready to become the man I saved in Kandahar again, because he would know exactly what to do right now. Jackson's gaze held hers for a long moment. Then without another word, he walked toward the injured men, already calling out instructions for their care. Behind them, the first county SWAT vehicles appeared on the horizon. Before them, the uncertain future of Redwood Falls hung in the balance. The battle had only just begun. The old community center, once a gathering place for summer socials and town meetings, now served a different purpose. 3 weeks after the confrontation at the mill, the Warriors Path program had transformed the space into something between a clinic counseling center and veteran refuge. In the main hall, Gabriel Reeves led 20 veterans through a modified Tai Chi sequence, his blindness no impediment to teaching movement patterns he had perfected through decades of practice. Despite their disabilities, some visible, others hidden, the men followed with growing confidence, finding stability in the deliberate motions. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget, Gabriel instructed, his walking stick propped against the wall. Combat changes you at the cellular level. These movements help reclaim your physical space. Olivia watched from the doorway, noting the transformation already visible in some participants. Former Iron Serpents who had arrived tense and hyper-vigilant now moved with increasing fluidity, not healed but healing. Ethan Reed had emerged as an unexpected leader among them. His medical background made him a natural liaison between veterans and clinic staff. More importantly, his genuine commitment to change inspired others to persevere when the path grew difficult. Progress report. Dr. Hayes approached, clipboard in hand. 14 consistently attending physical therapy, Olivia replied. 22 in psychotherapy. 5 have secured employment through the program's partnerships. 2 relapses with substance abuse, but both returned voluntarily for additional support. Hayes nodded satisfaction, evident despite her professional demeanor. Better outcomes than our initial projections. And Jackson? The question hung between them, complicated by all it left unspoken. After the shootout at the mill, Jackson had helped treat the wounded, given his statement to police, and disappeared. No arrest. Officer Carter had reluctantly acknowledged insufficient evidence connecting him directly to the Iron Serpent's criminal activities. No dramatic renunciation of his past. He had simply vanished from Redwood Falls, leaving both his supporters and detractors in confusion. Caleb, meanwhile, had established a splinter faction in neighboring Grantsville. Reports filtered back of increasing aggression, new recruiting efforts, and explicit threats against traitors who had joined the Warriors Path program. Still no sign, Hayes replied, though Maria at the gas station mentioned seeing his motorcycle passing through at dawn yesterday. Before Olivia could respond, Clara burst through the front door, her normally composed face flushed with distress. The diner, she gasped. They've vandalized the lighthouse. The Lighthouse Diner stood defaced, its iconic blue exterior, now marred by crude spray-painted serpents and violent threats. Windows had been shattered, booths slashed, the vintage counter scarred by knife marks. Most disturbing were the photographs nailed to the door, surveillance images of veterans entering the program, their faces circled in red paint. Been closed for an hour when it happened, Officer Carter explained, surveying the damage. No witnesses. Security camera was disabled first. Clara moved through the destruction with quiet dignity, her eyes cataloging each violation of the space she had nurtured for decades. When she reached the wall behind the counter, she stopped. There, spray-painted in jagged letters, Caleb sends regards. Traitors die. This isn't random vandalism, Ethan said, examining the photographs. This is psychological warfare. They're letting us know they're watching, that they can reach us anytime. Olivia noticed how the veterans who had accompanied them positioned themselves instinctively, backs to walls, eyes monitoring entrances, bodies angled to protect civilians. Months of therapy couldn't erase years of combat training. We should cancel today's sessions. Dr. Hayes suggested, ever practical. Assess security protocols. No. Clara's voice, though quiet, carried unmistakable resolve. That's exactly what they want, to frighten us into retreat. She picked up a broken coffee mug, its handle sheared off by whatever had been used to smash the counter. My husband came back from Vietnam with pieces missing too, she said, but he rebuilt himself day by day. We'll do the same with this place. The veterans exchanged glances, something unspoken passing between them. Ma'am, Ethan stepped forward. If you'll allow it, we'd like to help with repairs. Many of us have construction experience. Other veterans nodded in agreement. Bowie, been too long since we had a proper mission, one former Marine added. For the first time since they'd arrived, Clara smiled. I'd appreciate that very much. As they began organizing cleanup efforts, Olivia stepped outside, needing a moment to process. The morning sun illuminated Redwood Falls' Main Street, where normal life continued just blocks from this targeted destruction. Shop owners opened for business. A mail carrier delivered packages. Children waited for the school bus. Yet beneath this veneer of normalcy, tension hummed like an electrical current. Eyes tracked her movement with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and apprehension. The town remained divided on the Warriors Path program, grateful for decreased Iron Serpent's activity, but uncertain about rehabilitating the very men who had terrorized them. Dr. Reeves, the voice came from behind her. Olivia turned to find Mayor Wilson approaching, his expression grave. I heard about the lighthouse, he said. This is exactly the kind of retaliation the council feared. It's intimidation, not retaliation, Olivia corrected, and running from intimidation only encourages more. Wilson glanced through the diner's broken windows where veterans were already clearing debris with organized efficiency. The council meets tomorrow to review the program's probationary status, he said. This incident raises serious concerns about public safety. Wait, canceling the program won't improve safety, Olivia replied. It will only abandon the veterans who've committed to change and embolden those who oppose it. Perhaps, Wilson straightened his tie nervously, but the town's welfare must come first. As he walked away, Olivia noticed a motorcycle parked across the street, partially hidden in an alley. A familiar silhouette sat astride it, watching the scene unfold. Jackson. By the time she crossed the street, he had vanished, leaving only tire marks in the alley's loose gravel. The town council meeting the following evening became a referendum on the Warriors Path program itself. The high school auditorium filled beyond capacity, residents spilling into hallways, voices raised in competing arguments before proceedings even began. Mayor Wilson called for order repeatedly, his gavel striking with increasing force. This special session will address concerns following yesterday's vandalism at the Lighthouse Diner, he announced, specifically whether the Warriors Path program's probationary approval should be reconsidered in light of apparent retaliatory violence. Councilman Parker spoke first, his banker's precision giving weight to his words. While the program's intentions may be admirable, we cannot ignore that it has made Redwood Falls a target. The safety of our citizens must take precedence over rehabilitation efforts. Murmurs of agreement rippled through one section of the audience. The program isn't causing violence, Gabriel countered, standing with the dignity that had commanded troops for decades. It's exposing violence that already existed beneath the surface. These men aren't targeting us because we're helping veterans. They're targeting us because we're challenging their control. Dr. Hayes presented data decreases in reported intimidation since the program began, successful employment placements, preliminary mental health improvements among participants. Her clinical approach provided counterweight to emotional reactions. Then Clara stood, her petite frame somehow commanding the room's attention without effort. Yesterday, these men destroyed my diner, she said, gesturing to the veterans seated together. Today, they're rebuilding it. That transformation is what this program makes possible. The debate continued for hours, testimonials offered from both sides. Business owners worried about becoming targets. Program participants described their journey back from darkness. Officer Carter reported reduced criminal activity overall, though he attributed this more to Caleb's departure than the program's success. As the council prepared to vote, the auditorium doors opened. A hush fell over the crowd. Jackson Blackwood stood in the entrance, without his leather cut, dressed in simple jeans and a gray Henley. His presence electrified the room, some reaching instinctively for weapons that weren't there, others watching with wary curiosity. Mayor Wilson, Jackson's voice carried without effort. I'd like to address the council if permitted. Wilson hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Jackson moved down the center aisle with military bearing, conscious of all eyes tracking his movement. When he reached the podium, he surveyed the room's citizens who had feared him, veterans who had followed him, officials who had tacitly allowed his reign. Most of you know me as the leader of the Iron Serpents, he began, his voice steady. What many don't know is that before that, I was Sergeant First Class Jackson Blackwood, 5th Special Forces Group, Silver Star recipient, combat veteran of 3 tours. He paused, seemingly gathering resolve for what came next. I returned home to find my wife gone, my brother dead from an overdose, in a country that seemed to have moved on without us. The VA was overwhelmed, resources inadequate, so my teammates and I created our own support system. Jackson's gaze found Ethan among the veterans. Something unspoken passed between them. That support system twisted into something unrecognizable, he continued, something that betrayed everything we once fought for. I bear responsibility for that perversion, for not stopping it sooner, for allowing pain to justify cruelty. The room remained utterly silent, collective breath held. 3 weeks ago, Dr. Reeves reminded me of who I was before the man she saved in Afghanistan. A man who understood that strength comes from protecting others, not exploiting them. Jackson's eyes found Olivia briefly, then returned to the council. I've spent these weeks confronting what I became, tracking Caleb's movements, reaching out to Iron Serpents who didn't choose sides. Yesterday's attack on the lighthouse wasn't random. It's the beginning of Caleb's campaign to reclaim territory and punish what he sees as betrayal. Murmurs spread through the audience. Mayor Wilson leaned forward. Are you suggesting this violence will escalate? I'm stating it as fact, Jackson replied grimly. Caleb's gathering support from other outlaw groups. He views the Warriors Path program as a direct challenge to everything the Iron Serpents built. In his mind, this is existential. Then perhaps the wisest course is indeed to suspend the program, Councilwoman Rivera suggested. Remove the provocation. That won't stop him, Jackson countered. It will only convince him intimidation works. The only language men like Caleb understand is strength. So you're proposing what exactly? Officer Carter asked skeptically. Fighting fire with fire, more violence. No. Jackson's response came firm and immediate. I'm proposing that I join the Warriors Path program, publicly, as its most visible participant and advocate. The statement landed like a thunderclap. Confused whispers erupted throughout the auditorium. You expect us to believe you've reformed, Parker scoffed, after years of terrorizing this town. I don't expect belief based on words, Jackson replied evenly. Only the opportunity to demonstrate change through actions. Olivia studied him from her seat, the set of his shoulders, the steadiness of his gaze, the absence of the tightly coiled rage that had defined him before. Something fundamental had shifted during his weeks away. Gabriel's walking stick tapped as he stood again. When a warrior loses his way, the path back begins with a single step. If we deny that step, we deny the very possibility of redemption. Dr. Hayes added her professional assessment. From a clinical perspective, Mr. Blackwood's participation would provide powerful modeling for other veterans considering the program. His influence could accelerate our outreach substantially. Mayor Wilson looked troubled. And what about legal consequences for past actions? Are we simply wiping the slate clean? No, Jackson answered before anyone else could speak. I'm prepared to make restitution for damages caused under my leadership, to cooperate with investigations into specific criminal acts. Justice requires accountability. The phrase, an echo of Gabriel's words from weeks earlier, did not go unnoticed. Clara approached the podium, standing beside Jackson. The visual contrast was striking, the petite diner owner next to the former gang leader who towered over her. My husband used to say that the measure of a community isn't how it treats heroes, she said, her voice carrying despite its softness. It's how it treats those seeking redemption. The council called a brief recess to deliberate privately. The auditorium buzzed with conversation, residents arguing perspectives, veterans conferring in low voices. Olivia made her way to where Jackson stood apart from the crowds. "That was unexpected," she said. Jackson met her gaze directly. "I spent 3 weeks remembering who I was, who I wanted to be again. And who is that? Someone worthy of the second chance you gave me in Kandahar." His voice dropped lower. "Someone who protects rather than threatens." Before Olivia could respond, the council members returned to their seats. The room quieted in anticipation. Mayor Wilson cleared his throat. "After consideration, the council has decided to continue the Warriors Path program's probationary status for an additional 90 days. A mixture of cheers and groans met the announcement. "Additionally," Wilson continued, "we will accept Mr. Blackwood's participation subject to specific conditions regarding cooperation with law enforcement and restitution efforts." Relief visibly washed over Jackson, though he maintained his composed exterior. However, Wilson raised his voice over the growing murmurs. "Any further violence connected to the program will result in immediate termination. The safety of Redwood Falls remains our primary concern." As the meeting adjourned, residents filed out in clusters, conversations animated on both sides. The veterans gathered around Jackson, some wary others openly relieved to see their former leader choosing a new path. Ethan approached first, extending his hand. "Welcome back, Sarge." Jackson accepted the handshake, the simple gesture, bridging the chasm between what they had become and what they once were. "Never thought I'd be the one following you for a change," Ethan added with the ghost of a smile. "I'm not leading anymore," Jackson replied, "just walking the same path." Olivia watched the interaction, aware that a crucial piece had just shifted on the board. Jackson's public commitment had transformed the dynamic, completely giving hope to program participants, providing a visible symbol of change, and presenting Caleb with an unmistakable challenge. This was no longer just about rehabilitation. It had become a battle for Redwood Falls' soul, and the next move belonged to Caleb. Autumn painted Redwood Falls in brilliant hues as September yielded to October. The community center hummed with expanded activity therapy sessions, job training, family support groups. Participation had nearly doubled following Jackson's public commitment, with veterans from surrounding communities making the journey to join the program. Jackson integrated with quiet determination, neither seeking leadership nor avoiding responsibility. He participated in group therapy without reservation, sharing struggles that humanized him to former subordinates. During physical training, he worked alongside men who had once feared his anger, now united in the discipline of healing. Most significantly, he joined the restoration crew at the Lighthouse Diner, spending weekends repairing what Caleb's faction had destroyed. The symbolism wasn't lost on the town, the man who had once collected protection money, now rebuilding with his own hands. Olivia observed these changes with clinical detachment during program hours, but found her perspective shifting during unguarded moments. When Jackson helped an elderly veteran navigate stairs without drawing attention to his assistance. When he sat in silent solidarity beside a young Marine overwhelmed by a flashback. When he meticulously repaired Clara's vintage coffee mugs, carefully reassembling broken pieces. These weren't performances for an audience. They were quiet reclamations of the man buried beneath years of trauma and bitterness. On a crisp Thursday afternoon, Olivia found Jackson alone in the community center's workshop, sanding a replacement counter for the lighthouse. Sawdust coated his arms as he worked the wood with focused precision. "Clara will appreciate the craftsmanship," she observed. Jackson looked up, seemingly unsurprised by her presence. "My grandfather was a carpenter. Taught me basics when I was a kid." He ran his hand along the grain. "There's something honest about working with wood. It doesn't hide its flaws. You either work with them or start over. Is that what you're doing, starting over?" He considered this, setting down the sandpaper. "More like finding what was buried. The good parts, anyway." Olivia leaned against the workbench. "That anger didn't come from nowhere, Jackson. It served a purpose once. Protection," he acknowledged. "When everything else failed, anger was reliable. A wall between me and things I couldn't control. And now," Jackson met her gaze directly, "now I'm learning to live without the wall. It's exposed." The vulnerability in his admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Olivia's pager buzzed at her hip, breaking the moment. She glanced down. "Medical emergency at the clinic. I need to go." Jackson nodded, already returning to his work. But as she reached the door, he spoke again. Thank you for seeing something worth saving in Kandahar and here. The words followed her into the autumn afternoon, a bridge between past and present, between battlefields of different kinds. The emergency at the clinic turned out to be Mr. Gunderson's heart arrhythmia, serious but stabilized with prompt intervention. As evening settled over Redwood Falls, Olivia completed her documentation, the clinic quiet, save for the soft clicking of her keyboard. The knock at the back door came unexpectedly. Wary after recent events, she approached cautiously relieved to see Dr. Hayes through the window. Eleanor, she greeted, unlocking the door. I thought you were meeting with the VA representatives tonight. Hayes entered briskly, her expression grave. Meeting concluded early. We have a situation developing. She placed a file on the desk surveillance photographs showing Caleb with known members of militant biker gangs from 3 states. Meeting in warehouses, examining weapons, planning. My contacts in federal law enforcement shared these, Hayes explained. Caleb's building something bigger than we anticipated. Not just reclaiming territory, but establishing himself as a regional power. Olivia studied the images, noting dates and locations. 3 meetings in 2 weeks, growing numbers. And this, Hayes pointed to a photograph dated yesterday, Caleb, with 3 men in expensive suits. These individuals are connected to drug distribution networks throughout the Pacific Northwest. They're offering resources infrastructure, legitimacy of a sort. In exchange for what? Territory? Protection? A militia at their disposal. Hayes removed her glasses. Caleb's telling them he can deliver, but first he needs to prove himself by eliminating the traitors who undermined his cousin's organization. The implications settled heavily. The program participants, and those who support them. Hayes's voice remained clinical, but concern showed in her eyes. He specifically mentioned you, your father, Clara, and Jackson as primary targets. Olivia absorbed this, her medical training automatically assessing threat levels, response options. Have you informed Officer Carter? He's contacting county and state law enforcement, but resources are limited, response times problematic given our location. And Jackson, that's partly why I'm here, Hayes replied. He should be told, but his reaction concerns me. Despite progress, this kind of threat could trigger regression to previous patterns, seeking offensive action rather than defensive preparation. Olivia considered this. I'll tell him. Tonight. After Hayes departed, Olivia locked the clinic and walked to her truck, the evening air sharp with approaching winter. Stars emerged above the forest surrounding Redwood Falls, the beauty incongruous with the threat taking shape beyond the town's borders. She drove not toward home, but to the community center where lights still burned in the workshop. Jackson's motorcycle stood parked outside its modified chassis, distinct from civilian models. He looked up from the nearly completed counter when she entered, immediately reading concern in her expression. What's happened? He asked, setting down his tools. Olivia laid out the intelligence, precisely Caleb's growing alliance, the outside resources, the specific threats. She watched Jackson absorb each detail, noting the subtle shifts in his posture, the controlled breathing that spoke of combat training. When she finished, silence stretched between them. Jackson paced the length of the workshop, once, twice, his movements containing the energy of a predator suddenly alert. He'll come at night, he finally said. Overwhelming force, multiple angles. He'll want to make a statement, not just eliminate targets. Cherie, the program participants need to know, Olivia said. They have families, homes vulnerable to attack. Jackson nodded, already thinking tactically. We'll need safe houses, security protocols, communication systems. He paused, meeting her eyes. But Caleb's primary target will be you. Me, not you. Both of us but you represent something beyond betrayal to him. You're the catalyst that started this change. In his mind, you took his power, his identity. Olivia considered this. I should speak with my father, arrange additional security at the house. You should stay with me tonight. Jackson said the words emerging before he could reconsider them. He immediately clarified. My cabin has defensive advantages, remote location, clear sight lines, one access road easily monitored. The proposal hung between them, practical yet intimate in its implications. Eleanor is concerned about your reaction to this threat, Olivia said, that it might trigger regression to previous patterns. Jackson's jaw tightened. She's not wrong to worry. Part of me wants to hunt Caleb down before he can strike. He met her gaze directly. But that's not the path I've chosen. And if he comes for the people you care about, something shifted in Jackson's expression, a recognition of her deliberate choice of words, of the unspoken acknowledgement they contained. Then I'll defend them, he answered, with everything I have. But defense, not vengeance. Olivia nodded, decision made. I'll need to check on my father, first make arrangements. I'll come with you, Jackson said, already reaching for his jacket. Then we'll notify program participants, develop contingencies. He hesitated. The cabin isn't much, but it's defensible. As they exited the workshop, headlights swept the parking lot. Ethan's truck pulled in, braking hard when he spotted them. He emerged in obvious distress, moving with urgent purpose. They got Daniels, he announced without preamble. Ambushed him outside his apartment. He's alive but badly beaten. They left this. He handed Jackson a blood-stained Iron Serpent's patch with a message written across it. Traitors die, VRSA rises. VRSA, Olivia questioned. Veteran Revolutionary Solidarity Army. Jackson translated grimly. Caleb's new branding, more militia than motorcycle club. Ethan's expression reflected barely contained rage. Daniels just started the program last week. Has a 5-year-old daughter. They made her watch. The air between them, charged with dangerous potential violence, answered with violence the cycle that had defined their existence as Iron Serpents. Jackson closed his fist around the bloodied patched knuckles, whitening. For a moment, the former enforcer visibly warred with the man he was becoming. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of difficult restraint. Call Officer Carter, then contact everyone in the program. Emergency meeting in 30 minutes. As Ethan departed, Jackson turned to Olivia, his expression revealing the full measure of his struggle. This is what Caleb wants, he said quietly, to push until we become what he believes we truly are, until we prove his worldview correct. Olivia stepped closer, unintimidated by the barely leashed intensity radiating from him. Her hand covered his clenched fist, feeling the tension beneath her fingers. Who you are isn't determined by your enemies, she said. It's revealed by how you respond to them. Jackson's eyes held hers, finding something there that seemed to steady him. Slowly, his fist unclenched fingers, intertwining with hers, in a gesture both seeking and offering strength. The line between doctor and patient, between savior and saved, blurred in that moment of connection. We should go, he said finally. Your father will be worried. They walked to their vehicles beneath stars, now fully emerged the night sky, vast and impersonal above Redwood Falls. The town slept unaware of gathering storms of lines being drawn, of choices that would define not just individual futures, but the community's very identity. The battle for redemption had entered a new phase, one where the stakes extended beyond personal healing to the very soul of the place they all called home. The emergency meeting transformed the community center into a war room. Program participants gathered with their families, fear and determination mingling in equal measure. Officer Carter arrived with 2 deputies, their presence both reassurance and reminder of limited resources. Gabriel stood near the entrance, his blindness no impediment to sensing the room's emotional currents. History repeating, he murmured when Olivia approached. Different war, same patterns. Jackson took natural command of the briefing, his military experience evident in his organized presentation of threat assessments and response protocols. He assigned safe houses, established communication chains, outlined defensive measures without resorting to vigilantism. We work with law enforcement, he emphasized, nodding toward Officer Carter. But we also acknowledge their limitations. Our focus is protection, not retaliation. Some veterans bristled at the restriction, their instincts honed by combat to strike preemptively. Others appeared relieved at the clear boundaries between their past methods and present choices. What about families, Arden? A former Marine asked, his arm around his pregnant wife. My home isn't defensible. That's why we've established rotation housing, Jackson explained. Locations known only to those who need to know. Shared accommodations with security protocols. As the meeting progressed, Olivia observed the transformation unfolding. Men who had once used their training to intimidate, now applying the same skills to protect. The very capabilities that had made them dangerous now channeled toward community defense. After assigning responsibilities and establishing communication protocols, Jackson addressed the unspoken question hanging over the room. Some of you are wondering if this is worth it, he acknowledged. If the program is worth the risk Caleb now represents. His gaze swept the assembled veterans. That's a personal decision each of you must make. No judgment if you choose to step back until this threat passes. A tense silence followed. Then Ethan stood. With respect, Jackson, that's bullshit. His voice carried no anger, only conviction. We didn't survive combat by abandoning positions when things got hot. Nods of agreement spread through the veterans. Caleb wants us scared, Ethan continued. Wants us isolated. That's not happening. Not again. Another veteran rose, an older man who rarely spoke during group sessions. My grandson starts school next year. I'm doing this program so he grows up knowing me as something better than I've been. I'm not letting Caleb take that future. One by one, others voiced similar sentiments. Not blind bravado, but considered determination. The choices of men who had faced death before and understood its weight. As the meeting concluded and participants departed with security assignments, Dr. Hayes approached Jackson and Olivia. Impressive leadership, she observed. You've given them purpose without encouraging retaliation. Jackson's expression remained serious. They're good men who lost their way, like I did. The path back isn't easy, but it's clearer when walked together. Hayes nodded, then addressed Olivia. You'll stay somewhere secure tonight. She's coming with me, Jackson answered before Olivia could speak. My cabin is defensible, remote, and unknown to Caleb's faction. Hayes raised an eyebrow but offered no objection. And Gabriel. Staying with Eleanor and two other veterans, Olivia explained. Dad's surprisingly calm about all this. Combat veterans often are, Hayes noted. The familiar, even when dangerous, can be less distressing than the unknown. As the community center emptied, Olivia found her father waiting by the door, his walking stick tapping gently against the floor. You'll be careful, he said, not a question, but an instruction. Always am, she replied, embracing him. Gabriel's hand found Jackson's shoulder with unerring accuracy. Take care of my daughter, Sergeant. Yes, sir, Jackson responded automatically, military respect embedded in his tone. And remember, Gabriel added more quietly, the most important battles are fought within ourselves, not against our enemies. The wisdom in this simple statement hung between them as they parted Gabriel to Dr. Hayes's fortified home, Jackson and Olivia to the isolated cabin that offered both refuge and new complications. The night deepened around Redwood Falls as vehicles dispersed in carefully planned patterns. Veterans activating security protocols developed in distant battlefields now applied to protect American soil. Beneath this tactical choreography flowed currents of deeper significance, bonds forming between former adversaries, courage found in vulnerability, redemption sought through service rather than force. As Jackson's motorcycle led Olivia's truck along forest roads, navigating by moonlight toward uncertain sanctuary, the mountains surrounding Redwood Falls stood sentinel, ancient witnesses to human conflicts that, measured against geological time, amounted to little more than momentary flashes in darkness. Yet within those moments lay the full measure of humanity, its capacity for both destruction and healing, for violence and redemption, for losing its way, and sometimes finding the path home again. Jackson's cabin perched on a ridgeline overlooking Redwood Falls, accessible only by a single winding road. Its weathered timber exterior blended with surrounding pines, nearly invisible until you were upon it. Not a retreat, Olivia realized as they arrived, but a watchtower. Inside, the space reflected its owner, functional Spartan, yet containing unexpected elements of craftsmanship. Hand-carved shelving, a hearth built from river stones, windows positioned for maximum surveillance of approaches. You built this yourself, Olivia observed, noting the precision of joinery, the careful attention to structural integrity. Jackson nodded, securing locks and drawing curtains with practiced efficiency. After leaving the Army, needed something to do with my hands while my head sorted itself out. A wry smile touched his lips. Didn't sort out as well as the cabin did. He moved to the stone fireplace, arranging kindling with the same focused precision he applied to everything. As flames caught, illuminating the cabin's interior with flickering amber light, Olivia noticed the absence of expected elements. No liquor bottles, no weapons displayed as trophies, None of the performative masculinity common in veterans struggling with civilian transition. Instead, bookshelves held military history alongside philosophy and carpentry manuals. A guitar rested in one corner. A workspace contained detailed woodworking projects in various stages of completion. This wasn't the lair of the man who had terrorized Redwood Falls. It was the home of the soldier who had earned the Silver Star, the man buried beneath years of trauma and misdirected anger. "The program's working for you," she said, not a question, but an observation. Jackson remained focused on building the fire. "Working through me might be more accurate." He straightened, facing her. "PTSD doesn't just disappear. The anger, the hypervigilance, they're still there. I'm just channeling them differently now." The fire's warmth reached them, casting long shadows across rustic wooden floors. "Coffee," he offered. "Or there's tea. Eleanor insisted I stock it for proper hydration." The mundane question in their extraordinary circumstances brought a small smile to Olivia's face. "Tea would be nice." As Jackson filled a kettle, Olivia's phone vibrated with incoming messages, Ethan confirming all program participants had reached designated safe locations. "Doctor, Hayes reporting Gabriel was secure. Officer Carter detailing increased patrols throughout Redwood Falls. A community mobilizing, preparing, uniting against a common threat." "Everyone's in position," she reported, setting down her phone. Jackson nodded, the soldier in him visibly satisfied with operational details while the man remained troubled by the necessity. "Now we wait." Waiting. The most difficult part of any conflict. The space where imagination conjured worst outcomes, where anxiety flourished in uncertainty. They settled into an unexpected domesticity, tea mugs, cradled in hands accustomed to more consequential tasks, conversation flowing with surprising ease despite the circumstances that had brought them together. Professional boundaries blurred further as shared experiences in Afghanistan provided common language, shared reference points. "You were already gone when I woke up," Jackson said during a natural lull. "After the surgery in Kandahar, I wanted to thank you, but they'd evacuated you to another forward position." "Helmand Province," Olivia confirmed. "Another unit hit hard. Always more wounded. I looked for you later at Bagram. To say—" He trailed off, searching for adequate words. "To tell you that you'd saved more than just my life that day." The fire popped, sending sparks against the hearth screen. "What do you mean?" Olivia asked. Jackson set down his mug, his expression opening to reveal something rarely displayed. "Vulnerability. When artillery hit our position, I was thrown clear, but Martinez and Collins were still inside the collapsed structure. I could hear them calling." His eyes fixed on some middle distance, seeing not the cabin but dusty mountains half a world away. "I'd been their team leader for 3 years. Promised I'd bring them home." Olivia remained silent, allowing him the space to navigate difficult terrain. "I went back in, got them out. Then something hit me like being punched by God. Next thing I remember is lying in dirt, trying to hold my chest together with my hands, thinking, this is it. Not afraid exactly, just disappointed that I wouldn't see home again." Jackson's gaze returned to the present, finding Olivia. "Then you were there, covered in dust and blood, telling me I wasn't dying on your watch." A small, genuine smile formed. "Your exact words were, 'Not today, Sergeant. The paperwork would be hell.'" Olivia remembered the gallows humor that sustained medical personnel through impossible scenarios, the desperate determination to save one more when dozens had already been lost. "What you did," Jackson continued, "kneeling there under incoming fire, operating with battlefield instruments. It reminded me that courage comes in many forms. That heroism isn't just about taking lives when necessary, but saving them whenever possible." He looked down at his hands, calloused from construction rather than combat now. "I lost that perspective when I came home. Forgot what true strength looks like." The confession hung between them, raw and honest, in ways professional therapy sessions could never access. Not a patient speaking to a doctor, but a warrior sharing truth with someone who could truly understand. Olivia found herself touching the pendant at her neck, the fragment of her mother's blouse, her talisman of both failure and purpose. "I became a combat surgeon because I couldn't save my mother," she said, surprised by her own disclosure. "Car accident when I was 12. Rural road, no emergency services nearby. I tried to stop the bleeding, but Jackson's gaze held steady, offering the same space she had given him. My father found us an hour later. Me still trying, covered in her blood, even though she'd been gone for some time. Olivia's fingers tightened around the pendant. I decided that day I would never feel that helpless again, that I would save everyone I could wherever they needed me most. Even if that meant combat zones, Jackson finished for her, the places others avoided. Especially then, understanding passed between them the recognition of shared drives, different manifestations of the same human impulse to matter, to make difference in a world filled with suffering. The moment hung suspended, intimate, in a way neither had anticipated. Then Jackson's phone chimed with an incoming message breaking the spell. His expression shifted instantly to tactical assessment as he read the screen. Movement detected at the program's secondary safe house, he reported. Surveillance camera triggered. Olivia reached for her own phone. Ethan. Already responding with his team. Carter's been notified. Jackson moved to a locked cabinet, retrieving a set of binoculars. Could be Caleb probing defenses, testing response times. He crossed to the window, scanning the dark forest below with practiced efficiency. Or it could be a diversion, Olivia realized, to draw attention while they target priority objectives. Like us. Jackson continued his surveillance. This location isn't in any records, but determined enemies have ways of tracking movements. The calm professionalism in his voice belied the gravity of their situation. Not panic, but measured assessment, the response of someone who had faced death before and developed protocols for its management. If they come, Olivia asked, what's our contingency? Jackson indicated a trap door, nearly invisible, in the wooden flooring. Escape tunnel leads to a concealed garage on the north slope. Vehicle fueled and ready. Secondary road connects to county highway. Of course he would have prepared such measures. The hypervigilance of PTSD redirected toward practical precaution rather than paranoia. But they won't get that far, he added, retrieving a satellite phone from a drawer. Hayes has a quick reaction force on standby veterans with security backgrounds. Response time under 15 minutes. As if summoned by mention, the phone buzzed with Hayes' identifier. Jackson activated speaker function. False alarm at the secondary location. Hayes reported without preamble. Deer triggered the motion sensors, but we've received intelligence suggesting Caleb plans to move tonight. All units are on elevated alert. Understood, Jackson acknowledged. We're secure here. After the call ended, silence settled over the cabin, broken only by the fire's gentle crackling. The waiting resumed, now charged with heightened awareness. Jackson resumed his position at the window binoculars, scanning methodically. Olivia found herself checking medical supplies in her emergency kit, an automatic response to anticipated need developed through years of battlefield medicine. You should rest, Jackson suggested, not turning from his vigil. I'll take first watch. I've slept through artillery barrages in Afghanistan, Olivia replied. Hypervigilance works both ways. This drew a brief smile from him, recognition of their shared adaptations to abnormal circumstances. The hours passed in alternating conversation and comfortable silence. They discussed the program's progress, specific veterans' needs, strategies for community integration. Professional topics that nevertheless revealed personal insights, Jackson's intuitive understanding of triggers that sent men spiraling, Olivia's observations about healing indicators often overlooked in clinical settings. Midnight came and went. The fire burned down to embers. Outside, an owl called questions to an unhearing forest. Just after 2 in the morning, when conversation had dwindled and fatigue began to dull, even combat-honed alertness, headlights appeared at the base of the access road, faint at first, then cutting a deliberate path upward. Vehicle approaching, Jackson stated, instantly alert. Single headlight pattern suggests motorcycle. Voicery, they moved with coordinated efficiency, Olivia gathering essential items while Jackson accessed the surveillance system linked to concealed cameras along the approach road. One rider, he reported, studying the monitor. Alone. The image clarified as the motorcycle neared a camera position. Jackson's posture changed immediately. It's Ethan, he said, already moving toward the door. Ethan's arrival alone unannounced at this hour carried obvious implications. Something had gone wrong. Protocols breached, plans compromised. Jackson secured his weapon before opening the door, trust tempered by tactical caution. Ethan killed the motorcycle's engine 50 yards from the cabin, approaching on foot with hands visible. What happened? Jackson demanded as Ethan reached the porch. His breathing labored from the climb. Caleb knows about the safe houses, Ethan reported between breaths. He's got someone inside our communication chain. They're moving on multiple locations simultaneously. Jackson ushered him inside, securing the door behind them. Casualties? None yet. We evacuated in time based on early warning signals. Ethan accepted the water Olivia offered, drinking deeply before continuing. But they torched the Wilsons' place after finding it empty. Left more messages. They're escalating. And my father, Olivia asked, fear sharpening her focus. Secure. Hayes relocated everyone from the primary safe house before Caleb's people arrived. Ethan set down the glass. But that's not why I came. He reached into his jacket, retrieving a phone not his own. One of Caleb's men was captured by Carter's deputies. He had this. You need to see the messages. Jackson took the device, scrolling through text conversations with growing tension evident in his jaw. Without speaking, he handed the phone to Olivia. The messages detailed Caleb's operational plan, a coordinated strike against program participants designed to destroy the Warriors' Path initiative permanently. But more disturbing were the specific references to Olivia and Gabriel as primary targets. They know about your father's blindness, Jackson said quietly. Plan to use it against him. When? Olivia asked, medical detachment keeping panic at bay. Dawn, Ethan answered. Multiple teams. They've got reinforcements from allied groups in 3 states. Jackson checked his watch, 3 hours until sunrise. His expression shifted from tactical assessment to decision, shoulders squaring with resolved purpose. We need to evacuate Gabriel and Hayes immediately, he stated. Move them beyond Caleb's operational range. Already happening, Ethan confirmed. Hayes activated contingency protocols as soon as we confirmed the intel. But there's more. He hesitated, clearly troubled by what came next. The captured operative claimed Caleb has established observation on the clinic. He's convinced the program records are stored there on files detailing Iron Serpent's activities, evidence that could lead to federal charges. Understanding dawned on Olivia. The rehabilitation assessments. Veterans disclose past activities during intake interviews, which Caleb sees as betrayal and legal vulnerability, Jackson concluded. He'll want those records destroyed and anyone who knows their contents eliminated. The implication settled heavily. Caleb wasn't just targeting the program, he was attempting to erase all evidence of the Iron Serpent's activities, along with anyone who could testify about them. I need to secure those files, Olivia said, already gathering her jacket. Transfer them to federal custody where they'll be protected. It's exactly what he wants, Jackson countered, to draw you out. Those files contain confidential medical information of 37 veterans, she replied firmly. Men who trusted us with their darkest moments. I won't abandon that trust. The determination in her voice brooked no argument. Jackson recognized it, the same unyielding commitment that had kept her operating under artillery fire in Kandahar. Then we go together, he said. Secure perimeter-controlled approach, minimal exposure. Ethan nodded in agreement. I'll coordinate with Carter's deputies, establish blocking positions to limit Caleb's movement options. The next 15 minutes unfolded with military precision communication channels, established routes, planned contingencies developed. Not the chaotic reaction Caleb likely anticipated, but the measured response of combat veterans applying battlefield lessons to civilian defense. As they prepared to depart, Jackson secured the cabin methodically. His movements displayed none of the barely restrained rage that had defined him as the Iron Serpent's leader. Instead, they showed the focused discipline of a soldier with clear mission parameters: protect the innocent, secure vital information, minimize casualties on all sides. Ethan, he said as they reached the vehicles, if this goes sideways, the priority is getting Dr. Reeves to safety. Everything else is secondary. Ethan nodded, understanding the hierarchy of objectives. And you, Jackson checked his secure communications device one final time. I'll do what's necessary to end this threat permanently. The statement could have carried menacing implications from the former gang leader. Instead, coming from the man now committed to rehabilitation, it promised resolution without vengeance, justice without cruelty. Let's move, he said, mounting his motorcycle. As engines started and headlights illuminated the forest road, Olivia felt the weight of approaching confrontation, not just with Caleb and his forces, but with the fundamental question that had guided her since losing her mother: who could be saved and at what cost? The answer would be determined before dawn broke over Redwood Falls. Shoshana Shorin. The clinic stood dark and silent as they approached from the service alley, its familiar outline transformed by shadows into something almost alien. No visible watchers, but Jackson's combat instincts registered subtle disturbances: a cigarette butt too fresh, a delivery container slightly repositioned. "They've been here," he whispered as they reached the rear entrance. "Recently." Olivia unlocked the door with practiced efficiency security code, disabling the alarm before it could trigger. Inside, emergency lighting cast minimal illumination enough to navigate without broadcasting their presence through windows. "Files are in the secure cabinet in my office," she explained, leading them through the darkened corridor. "Digital records backed up to encrypted cloud storage, but original assessment documents are physical." Jackson moved with practiced silence, checking sightlines and potential ambush positions as they advanced. Ethan maintained rear security communication device monitoring updates from Carter's patrols throughout town. Olivia's office appeared undisturbed, patient files organized in clinical precision, medical references aligned on shelves, her desk clear, save for a photograph of Gabriel in uniform and a small potted plant struggling toward light. The secure cabinet yielded to her key, revealing stacked folders, each containing a veteran's journey from warrior to civilian, from violence to healing. The most damning evidence against Caleb and his faction lay not in criminal accusations, but in the documented suffering of men led astray. "We'll need to move these in stages," Olivia assessed, calculating volume against carrying capacity. "Most critical files first, then—" Glass shattered in the clinic's front section. Jackson reacted instantly, positioning himself between the office door and Olivia. "Perimeter breach," Ethan reported quietly, checking his communication device. "Carter's deputies are reporting multiple intrusions throughout town. Coordinated distractions to divide response resources." Jackson processed this with tactical dispassion. "You take the first set of files out through the rear, get them to Hayes' secure location. We'll prepare the second batch." Ethan hesitated, torn between mission parameters and leaving comrades. "Go!" Jackson ordered, his command voice brooking no argument. 15 minutes, then return with backup. After Ethan departed with the first document set, Jackson secured the office door and helped Olivia prepare remaining files for transport. Their movements synchronized with practiced efficiency, doctor and soldier healer and protector roles complementary rather than opposed. More sounds from the clinic's front section, careful movement, attempting stealth, but betrayed by occasional creaks of floorboards. Not the random destruction of vandals, but the methodical search pattern of trained operatives. 3 minutes until extraction window," Jackson whispered, checking his watch. "Stay behind me. Maintain contact. Move only when I signal." Olivia nodded, medical bag containing vital files secured across her body. Years of battlefield medicine had taught her to follow tactical directives in conflict zones, to trust those trained for combat, while she focused on saving lives. They had almost reached the rear exit when a shadow separated from darkness ahead, then another behind. "Well, well," a familiar voice drawled from the gloom. "The traitor and the doctor. How convenient." Caleb Hayes emerged from shadow, flanked by 4 men whose posture and positioning suggested military or law enforcement background. All armed, all positioned for maximum tactical advantage. Jackson shifted, keeping Olivia behind him, while assessing options with combat-honed precision. "This ends now, Caleb," he stated, voice calm despite their dangerous positioning. "Law enforcement knows your location. Assets are inbound." Caleb laughed, a sound empty of humor. "Always the strategic thinker, cousin, but you miscalculated this time." He gestured broadly. "Town's emergency services are currently responding to incidents at 3 locations. Deputies diverted to reported shootings at opposite ends of Redwood Falls. Response time to this location, approximately 22 minutes. His intelligence assessment, while disturbing, confirmed Jackson's earlier suspicion. Caleb had evolved from gang leader to something more dangerous, more organized, more tactical. "What do you want?" Jackson asked, buying time calculating angles. "What belongs to me?" Caleb answered coldly. "The territory, the loyalty, the respect." His gaze shifted to Olivia. and the elimination of those who turned warriors into weaklings, begging for forgiveness. One of Caleb's men moved slightly, revealing a detail. Jackson immediately cataloged the characteristic bulge of body armor beneath civilian clothing. Armed, protected, and positioned for maximum tactical advantage. No viable offensive options without endangering Olivia. The files are already gone. Olivia stated professional detachment, masking fear. Transferred to federal custody. Destroying evidence won't erase what you've done. Caleb's expression hardened. Then we'll have to settle for destroying witnesses instead. He raised his weapon not toward Jackson as expected, but directly at Olivia. Time compressed into crystalline focus. Jackson calculated trajectories, computed response options, evaluated survival probabilities with combat-trained precision. One conclusion emerged: he could save Olivia or himself, not both. The choice required no deliberation. Jackson lunged forward as Caleb's finger tightened on the trigger. His body intercepted the bullet's path impact, driving him backward against Olivia. Pain exploded through his chest, familiar yet always shocking, the body's outraged response to violent penetration. More shots erupted in the confined space, Ethan returning with backup, engaging Caleb's force from the rear entrance. Tactical advantage shifted in seconds. Caleb's carefully planned ambush collapsing into chaotic firefight. Jackson fought to remain standing to keep himself between Olivia and danger, but his legs betrayed him. He slid downward, leaving a crimson trail on the wall behind. Olivia caught him with surprising strength, combat medicine training already asserting control over emotional response. Her hands located the wound with professional precision, applying pressure while simultaneously assessing severity. "Stay with me," she commanded the doctor, replacing the woman. "Eyes open, Jackson. Focus on my voice." The irony registered through Payne's haze, same words, different battlefield. Roles reversed from their first meeting in dust and blood. Around them, the firefight concluded with brutal efficiency, Ethan and Hayes' security team neutralizing Caleb's force through superior positioning and tactical discipline. When silence fell, broken only by radio communications and the shuffle of securing prisoners, Caleb remained standing, disarmed but defiant, hatred burning in eyes that tracked Jackson's blood pooling on clinic tiles. Medical emergency, Olivia called, professionalism driving priorities. GSW to the chest, probable lung involvement. I need spacelight and the trauma kit from examination room 3. Hayes' team responded with military discipline, creating a protected treatment space while maintaining security. Ethan secured Caleb, personally restraints applied with barely controlled rage. Time fragmented for Jackson, clarity alternating with darkness as shock claimed its due. Olivia's face remained his anchor, her focused determination, a beacon through Payne's rising tide. "Don't you dare," she commanded as his consciousness wavered. "I didn't save you in Kandahar for you to bleed out on my clinic floor." Her hands moved with battlefield efficiency, cutting away clothing, assessing wound characteristics, establishing intravenous access with first attempt despite difficult conditions. "Pneumothorax developing," she reported to medical personnel who had arrived. "Need chest decompression now. Entry wound right thoracic region, no exit." Jackson forced himself to remain present despite shock's seductive pull toward darkness. Important to witness this moment, Caleb defeated not through superior violence, but through community's collective defense, the path of protection proving stronger than the path of destruction. Caleb's voice cut through medical activity directed at Jackson with venomous intensity. "You could have been something great, something powerful. Instead, you're bleeding out for people who feared you, who never respected you." Despite Payne's overwhelming presence, Jackson found strength to respond. "You never understood." He managed each word cautiously. "Real strength isn't about being feared. It's about being worthy of respect." Weakness claimed him, then consciousness receding, despite Olivia's increasingly urgent commands to stay present. As darkness enveloped his awareness, one thought provided singular comfort: he had finally chosen the right battlefield, the right sacrifice. The man who had earned the Silver Star in Afghanistan had returned fully and finally on a clinic floor in Redwood Falls. Consciousness returned, gradually assembling itself from disconnected fragments. Pain duller now centralized in his chest. Rhythmic beeping of monitoring equipment. Antiseptic scents overlaid with something floral. Jackson opened his eyes to soft morning light filtering through hospital blinds. Gabriel Reeves sat beside the bed, walking stick propped against his chair, unseeing eyes somehow focused precisely in Jackson's direction. "Welcome back, Sergeant," Gabriel greeted, as if continuing a conversation only briefly interrupted. Jackson assessed his situation with military efficiency, hospital room, medical monitoring, surgical bandages visible beneath his gown. The fact of survival confirmed despite memories suggesting otherwise. "Olivia," he asked, voice rough from intubation. "Completing paperwork," Gabriel replied. "She's barely left since they brought you in 3 days ago. I practically ordered her to get coffee." 3 days. The information registered slowly through medication's fog. Jackson's tactical mind immediately sought situational assessment. Caleb, in federal custody, along with 37 members of his organization. Gabriel's expression remained composed, yet satisfaction edged his tone. Turns out, attacking a town full of combat veterans, implementing a federally supported rehabilitation program, attracts significant attention from multiple agencies. Jackson processed this pieces assembling into strategic understanding. The program, continuing with expanded resources, Gabriel confirmed. The community's perspective shifted considerably after witnessing Caleb's attack and the veterans' disciplined defense. Mayor Wilson called it the difference between those who use strength to destroy and those who use it to protect. The door opened, admitting Olivia, hospital ID clipped to her white coat, dark circles beneath her eyes, speaking of minimal sleep hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Seeing Jackson conscious, her professional demeanor briefly cracked, revealing profound relief before clinical assessment reasserted control. "About time," she said, approaching the bed to check monitoring equipment. "Your stubborn streak extends to healing, apparently." Gabriel rose his walking stick, tapping gently against the floor. "I'll inform the others he's awake. Give you time for proper medical assessment." His departure left them alone, doctor and patient savior, and save roles continually reversing between them. Olivia checked Jackson's vital signs with clinical precision fingers, pressing gently against pulse points, stethoscope confirming respiratory function, professional distance providing necessary space for emotional processing. "The bullet missed your heart by less than 2 centimeters, she informed him, voice steady, despite the statement's weight. "Collapsed your right lung, fractured 2 ribs, and caused significant internal bleeding." Ekupfon. "So I'll live?" Jackson asked, attempting lightness despite pain's persistent reminder. "Yes," Olivia confirmed, finally meeting his gaze directly. "Though if you ever again use your body as a human shield without tactical necessity, I may reconsider my Hippocratic oath." The attempted humor barely masked deeper emotion, fear, relief, something more complex neither seemed ready to name. "It was tactically necessary," Jackson countered softly. "Caleb's shot would have hit you center mass. Unprotected, non-survivable." Olivia's professional composure wavered. "You calculated that in milliseconds. Some decisions don't require calculation." The simplicity of his statement hung between them, acknowledgement of priorities that transcended tactical assessment, of values rediscovered through pain and healing. Olivia's hand found his fingers intertwining with careful awareness of medical lines. "Thank you for saving my life. Anum." Balance restored. Jackson replied, a small smile touching his lips despite pain. "1 life-saving surgery each." Her answering smile contained more than professional satisfaction, something personal, something beginning rather than concluding. "The program participants have been taking shifts guarding your room," she informed him, returning to factual reporting. "Ethan organized a rotation. They consider you family now." The information touched something deep within Jackson, the recognition that brotherhood extended beyond combat units and misguided gang affiliations. That family could be found in shared healing as surely as in shared hardship. "And the lighthouse?" he asked, remembering the restoration project left unfinished. "Reopened yesterday," Clara insisted. Olivia's expression softened. "The community completed renovations while you were recovering. Your replacement counter was installed exactly as you designed it." Beyond the hospital window, Redwood Falls continued its daily rhythms, altered by recent events, yet fundamentally resilient. A community that had faced its darkest elements and emerged stronger, more unified, more compassionate. "Rest," Olivia instructed, physician reasserting authority over the woman. "Your body needs time to heal. Everything else can wait. But as she turned to leave, Jackson's hand caught hers. Olivia? She paused, something vulnerable showing briefly through professional composure. When I'm discharged, he said, voice carrying quiet certainty, there's a ridge behind my cabin. Best view in the county. Thought you might want to see it sometime. The invitation contained more than its simple words acknowledgement of possibilities beyond doctor and patient, beyond saver and saved, of connection forged through shared purpose and mutual recognition. I'd like that, Olivia replied softly, allowing herself to be simply a woman responding to a man rather than a doctor addressing a patient. As she departed to complete her rounds, Jackson settled back against hospital pillows, pain present but manageable. Through the window, mountains stood sentinel beyond Redwood Falls, ancient witnesses to human struggles, both vast and intimate. The path forward remained uncertain, recovery measured in small victories rather than dramatic transformations. But the direction had been established, the first steps taken. From destruction toward creation, from isolation toward community, from being feared toward being respected, from lost to found. Trish Wright. 6 months later, the Lighthouse Diner hummed with Friday evening activity. Veterans from the Warriors Path program mingled with townspeople, the divisions that had once defined Redwood Falls increasingly blurred by shared purpose and mutual respect. In the largest booth, Gabriel held court, his blindness no impediment to commanding attention as he recounted military anecdotes sanitized for civilian ears. Clara moved between tables with practiced efficiency, coffee pot in perpetual motion, her diner once again the community's beating heart. At the counter, Jackson put finishing touches on installation drawings, the Warriors Path Center's expansion plans. Federal funding had transformed the program from local initiative to regional model, with similar centers opening in neighboring states. Structural modifications look sound, he commented as Olivia joined him, her clinic coat exchanged for casual attire after completing afternoon rounds. Hayes will be pleased, she replied, accepting coffee Clara delivered without being asked. VA representatives are impressed with recidivism statistics, 0% return to criminal activity among program graduates. Jackson nodded satisfaction, though pride remained tempered by awareness of work still unfinished. His own healing continued, PTSD, managed rather than cured anger, channeled rather than eliminated past, acknowledged rather than erased. The diner's door opened, admitting Ethan and 2 younger veterans in Warriors Path t-shirts. They carried power tools and measuring tapes, evidence of the community service projects now integral to rehabilitation protocols. Thompson's wheelchair ramp is complete, Ethan reported, joining them at the counter. Started Mrs. Gunderson's roof repairs. Should finish tomorrow if weather holds. The easy camaraderie between veterans and townspeople represented the program's greatest success, not just individual healing, but community transformation. Former adversaries now partners in rebuilding what fear and violence had damaged. Outside, twilight settled over Redwood Falls streetlights illuminating Main Street, where iron serpents had once patrolled. Memorial Day flags fluttered from lampposts honoring service members past and present without glorifying war itself. The casual observer would see only a typical small-town evening, a community gathering place, friends sharing meals, mundane conversations about weather and local sports. But beneath this ordinary surface flowed extraordinary currents, the daily miracle of healing, of redemption, of warriors finding their way home. Jackson felt Olivia's hand find his beneath the counter, a private connection amid public space. Their relationship had evolved, gradually built on mutual respect and shared purpose rather than romantic idealization. The doctor and the patient, the savior and the saved, roles continuing to alternate as circumstances required. Gabriel's walking stick tapped against the floor as he approached unerringly, navigating between tables despite his blindness. "Thought you might want to see this," he said, extending a letter bearing official insignia. "Arrived today from the Department of Veterans Affairs." Jackson accepted the document with controlled curiosity. As he read, his expression shifted through surprise to something deeper, validation not sought, but profoundly meaningful when received. "They've approved your proposal," Olivia noted, reading alongside him. "The Warriors Path will become a national program model." Gabriel's scarred face creased with satisfaction. Turns out redemption has practical applications beyond the spiritual realm. Jackson carefully refolded the letter, emotion controlled, but present in his measured movements. This wasn't my achievement. It belonged to everyone who chose a different path when easier options existed. That's precisely why it succeeded, Gabriel replied. True leaders understand that victory means something different in healing than in warfare. Kachamam. The philosophical observation hung between them, warriors from different generations united by common understanding of battle's cost and peace's value. Clara approached with fresh coffee and her signature apple pie, its crust golden and fragrant with cinnamon. On the house tonight, she announced. Seems fitting to celebrate good news with good food. As conversations flowed around them, Jackson found himself momentarily a part observer rather than participant, assessing the journey from Iron Serpent leader to Warrior's Path coordinator, from feared to respected, from lost to found. The pendant at Olivia's neck caught evening light as she laughed at something Ethan said the fragment of her mother's blouse she still carried reminder of both deepest failure and highest purpose. Jackson understood the symbolism in ways he couldn't have before his own healing journey began. Some wounds never fully closed, some losses remained permanent, but damage need not define destiny. Scars could mark survival rather than merely suffering. Gabriel's voice cut through his reflection. You're awfully contemplative for a celebration, Sergeant. Jackson smiled slightly. Just measuring distance traveled against road remaining. The best journeys have no real destination, Gabriel observed. Only better questions at each milestone. Outside, full darkness had claimed Redwood Falls stars emerging above mountains that had witnessed human struggles since time immemorial. Within the lighthouse diner, warmth and light pushed back against night's natural domain, a microcosm of humanity's perpetual effort to create meaning within uncertain existence. Speaking of journeys, Olivia said quietly to Jackson, didn't you promise to show me that ridge behind your cabin sometime? Her invitation carried layers of meaning acknowledgement of both what they had become to each other and what remained to be discovered, of healing achieved and healing still unfolding. Sunrise tomorrow, Jackson suggested. Best light for seeing distances. Gabriel smiled knowingly, hearing far more than words exchanged. His walking stick tapped gentle rhythm against worn diner flooring percussion, accompanying Redwood Falls' continuing transformation. Later, as they stepped into cool evening air, Jackson paused to observe the lighthouse diner from outside its windows glowing with golden light silhouettes moving within the restoration he had helped complete, now serving its intended purpose. What are you thinking? Olivia asked, following his gaze. Jackson considered the question, finding simpler truth beneath complex possibilities. That some things can be rebuilt stronger than they were before breaking. She took his hand, understanding, extending beyond words. Together they walked toward his motorcycle, the machine once symbolizing intimidation, now representing freedom and connection. Behind them, the lighthouse diner continued fulfilling its namesake's purpose, guiding those temporarily lost toward safety, toward community, toward home. The journey remained unfinished, healing, incomplete, redemption, ongoing. But the path had been found, each step illuminating the next. For warriors learning to live beyond battlefields. For healers carrying their own wounds. For a community discovering strength in vulnerability rather than fear. The land of healing welcomed them all,